are back. We're back. Well, a week off. I left it to you guys. I left it to Puka, right, to be in charge. No show, nothing.
I was waiting for Puka to contact me, and nobody contacted me.
I was looking forward to it, guys. I'm like, you know what? I don't need to watch any of this stuff. The boys are going to watch it. They're going to update the show. They're going to do everything. I went to Mexico, did not get hijacked, so that was good. But yeah, we had a week off. But I think we're back now. I think we a lot of off-season holiday stuff, traveling. But I think now we're getting into the heart of racing. Speed weeks are officially going to get started. So I don't see any pauses here. Maybe we'll see.
Well, what you just stated, it's the middle of January, and you stated we're getting into the heart of racing.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It is. I mean, there's what, 3 off weeks, maybe something like that. Yeah. I mean, it is like literally, Minnesota South is going to go on this weekend, and then we got, of course, the World of Outlaws getting started at Volusia. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But episode number 208 brought to you by Impact Health Sharing. So, self-employed, trucker, real estate agent, direct sales, whatever you may be in, if you have to pay for your own health insurance and you've been asking yourself questions, am I paying too much, right? Why do I have to go to this doctor when I want to go to this doctor here? Why do I got to be stuck with this in-network stuff? If them are things that bother you, if you don't barely ever go to the doctor and you're like, why on earth am I paying all this money for something I don't use? Hit me up. 218-969-1380. I have a product called Impact Health Sharing. So it's a great alternative to the rising cost of health insurance. A lot of people are very happy with it. You can go to any doctor that you want. If you're a business owner, you want it for your employees, self-employed, just want it for yourself or a family. We have options for all of you. Family cost right now, looking at right around $600 a month, $2,500 deductible for the whole family, not individual, the whole family. So definitely worth looking into. Hit me up. I can get you a quick quote, get you some information. That's Impact Health Sharing. So let's start with a little disclaimer. We like to have fun on the show. We're just three knuckleheads, right, with a platform here to talk about racing. We're not going to talk about football. Bert, regardless, not talking about it. Ain't going to happen, okay? But we're going to talk about racing, and we like to hit the hot button once in a while, right? We like to give drivers and tracks and promoters love. If they do something stupid, I like to call them out, and me and Kraus can do that. Why? Because we're both racers, and we've done both. We've won races, and we've done plenty of stupid shit. It is what it is. So we're qualified to talk about that kind of stuff. If it hurts your feelings, if you're soft, if you're fragile, probably not going to be for you, because we might sting you a little bit. It is what it is. But we like to have a hell of a lot of fun, talk a lot of shit. And if that bothers you, this probably ain't for you. So let's get after it, boys. Episode 208 in the book. I guess over the last couple of weeks here, the Wild West Shootout was kind of the big event, so to speak, going on. Of course, the Chili Bowl, too. But that was a big event going on. First thoughts, right? We can touch on, if you guys want to touch on results, that's all on my race pass. Some thoughts you guys might have on the Wild West Shootout. Best race, what drivers stood out to you, who was dominant, who was a disappointment. Bert, let's go ahead and start with you. What stuck out to you this year down in Vado, New Mexico?
Well, I mean, obviously, in the late model division, Bobby Pierce was the hot driver. He won all of the races except one. And I get one thing I'm a little disappointed, I guess, with their format, from the standpoint that, I don't know, I guess I'd like to see some inverts or something. I mean, Bobby Pierce on the feature started on the pole, second, on the pole, third. And I mean, there's only a handful of, national touring drivers down there. And so I'd like to see some sort of invert and, just make it a little bit more exciting for the fans while the the 50 fans that were in the stands, for some of those nights, there wasn't a lot, at least from what I saw, there wasn't much of a crowd, although I heard it was cold by their standards there.
Yeah, so two things there. First of all, it was cold, right? They didn't have any fans last year. They typically don't get a big fan base. It's literally in the middle of El Paso and Las Cruces, New Mexico, kind of in between there. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a drive each way. I don't think they have a big fan base overall. The cold weather kept people home for sure. Heck, it even snowed one of the days. It was an off day, but they did get snow down there. But as far as I'm going to ask Kraus this question as a racer. You look at this is a hell of a lot of travel. It's a distance. It's pretty far west for these late model guys to go. You think back to the USA Nationals a couple of years ago when Jonathan Davenport was butthurt about inverts and double heats and all that type of stuff. Do you think if they went to a format like that some of the drivers would just say, screw it, we'll just go to speed weeks and get ready?
No, you're absolutely right on that. They wouldn't show up. If they didn't have the qualifier, starting on the pole, win your heat, start in the front, those guys wouldn't even show up. And it's probably the reason why they do that format is to make sure those drivers do show up. Because if they don't get those drivers, who's really else is going to watch? So yeah, no, you're 100% right there. They have to stick to that format, and it's like Bert said, it's tough, especially with how dominant some of those guys were down there. Dillard and Pearson, those guys that you put them up front, it was super tough to deal with, but. The good thing was Kyle Larson wasn't real good in qualifying in his heat, so it was always fun watching him come through the pack anyway. But no, you're right. If they changed that format, majority of those guys wouldn't show up.
With that said, Bert, you're spot on. I mean, I could not agree more. It is not entertaining as a fan, right? Watching the top guy start on the front row every single race. It's just not. It does not provide the entertainment value. So I think you hit the nail on the head. And you got that with Lucas Oil. You got that with World of Outlaw. I mean, they got a little redraw there. But I think as far as an entertainment value goes, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'd be skeptical to see with Speed Weeks literally a week after if some of those guys would say screw it and just go east instead of west. So kind of a slippery slope there. Any thoughts, Bert?
Well, I guess one thing is, I mean, they redrew for their starting position in the features, correct? So, I mean, the heat race winners, I believe, redrew for their starting position in the features. So, I mean, Pierce, all the features except for one, he picked the front row. So he's out.
Well, there was only 4 heats, right?
Right. I mean, it's out of 4, so you have a 50% chance starting on the front row. But I mean, maybe he's using his luck up early this year. But one thing you just mentioned, the long distance travel. I guess I want to get your opinion on this. What's the rationale for Bishop showing up just for a couple of shows and not the entire series?
Well, I think he's sponsored in part. I think he's got a lot of so Royal Jones owns Votto, right? And he owns Mesilla Valley Transport. He owns all this stuff. He throws money at several of these drivers. I'm not sure which ones he sponsors, which ones he doesn't. So I think some of them are like, got to get there. It's Royals race. He sponsors me. Got to get there. But I think typically he'd be there. If it was his own team, he would have been there. But being that he's a house car driver and they had some testing obligations coming into the season, it was all about the testing. So there's no better test than actually racing, in my opinion. But they had some things in mind, and I guess it'll probably pay off for him. But I think he wanted to be there. I'm pretty confident in that. But I think that overall as a team, they said, you know what, let's go do some testing. And that ended up raining out anyway, so they should have just went west.
Okay. I was just kind of curious on that. I mean, I guess some of my other thoughts, Kyle Larson won the last night. He was actually the only driver in the late model division to win a feature and not start on the front row because Cade Dillard won the other one, and he started on the pole or on the outside pole, I believe, in the feature that he won. And we're going to get into local drivers later on, so I guess I'll save that for later.
Kraus, any initial thoughts on the Wild West Shootout?
No, the only thing I'm super impressed with Cade Dillard all weekend. Not only in the mod, but I thought he was really good in the late model too, which, the last year or two hasn't really in the late model anyway. He's a big name. There's no doubt about it. And I think a lot of people were, making that jump from the mod to the late model, and then the mod's dominant. I mean, I think everybody right now is writing that $100,000 check to him at Mississippi Thunder, which is it's big hype for that right now. So that's awesome that there's already talk about that. Who's getting that $100,000? So that's cool. But he was good in the late model too. Getting the win there and he's running up front. So it'll be super interesting to watch him throughout the course of the year, what he's going to do, and throw another monkey wrench, and maybe he can run with the top guys up front. So just watching him and the top guys. I didn't think Bishop was very good. Thought he was okay at times. They're going to have to get going, because that Longhorn car doesn't. That second, third, fourth is not going to work for Longhorn house car. You're either winning or you're winning. That's basically how that works. So overall, I thought it was a decent show. It's fun watching. I thought Nate Reinke had good runs in his cars, and Rodin had some good runs. So it's fun watching those guys. Ricky Weiss was just kind of okay all weekend. Didn't really do a whole lot. So just watching the local guys, and I thought the mod races for the most part were fun to watch. There's a really good field of mod cars. Sanders wasn't very good. Ramirez had a bunch of bad luck. Tyler Wolf was up and down. He was fast for a while. So Dan Ebert, I thought, was very, very solid all week. The week and a half, I think he was running in the top 5 pretty much the whole time. So just fun to watch those guys, and it's good to sometimes just sit on the couch when it's negative 54 to below or whatever it was up here. And I had games on Wednesday and Friday, so I didn't get to see a whole lot of it. But it's just fun to watch those guys and watch the locals. That's a big thing. I know we talked about that last show, is cheer on the locals and hope they do well down there.
Yeah, and we'll get into that being one of my disappointments in just a second. Who stood out to me? I mean, obviously Pierce, right? And Cade Dillard. Obviously those two. Garrett Alberson showed some signs of speed down there as well. He had some pretty good runs. We'll talk a little bit more about Dustin Sorensen. I got some high hopes for him. Kyle Larson didn't really look good until they switched cars. His first car was terrible. And I mean, by his standards, terrible. And then when he switched to that other car, their so-called backup car, that thing was significantly faster. So they were talking maybe they have some issues with that. And they figured they're going to have to completely go through that thing to figure out what's wrong before they even put it back on the racetrack. So let's talk about any particular races over the 6 nights between the lates, the mods, or the X mods. Was there any races that really stuck out to you guys?
I can't remember what night it was, but the night that Dillard was involved in an accident in the modified heat races, and they weren't even sure if he was going to be able to get back out onto the track. Had to start in the back of a B. I think he won the B, came
From
back
20th,
up,
wasn't it? Won
the B, and then had to start in the back of the feature. And this is where, we've talked a lot on the show about watching a stream versus actually being there. This is where I would have preferred to actually be there, because while the camera is showing the leaders running, the action was actually Dillard working his way through the field. He got up to second or third, and he made contact with another car, and I believe that was the same race, and he took responsibility for it. Although the other guy had to retire from the race, and Dillard got second or third. But that's probably the one that sticks in my mind the most.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. And then Dan shot over a message, and I didn't get a chance to watch it. But he said the X-Mod race on Saturday night, the second to last night, he said that was a really, really good race, a great battle for the lead throughout. Kraus, did you get a chance to watch that?
I can't remember. I think who won it? Tell me who won it. Was it Morton or was it?
I don't think it was Morton. I don't think he won that night. Was it Rivera maybe?
It might have been. I know one of those nights I actually picked an X-Mod guy to win. I don't know any of those guys, but
right.
You either go Rivera, Morton, or some people were taking Jackson out, but he won one and then bolted town. So I was watching it. I had a couple things on too Saturday night. I think I was probably watching the Chili Bowl at that time too. But I thought the last night, super heartbreak for Bobby Pierce on that last night. A lot of money on the line there. And then getting that flat tire. And, I think a lot of people thought maybe Larson got into the back of him and ended up cutting that tire down, but you see it go down over in 3 before Larson got into him. And that was going to be I think that would end up being a slide job city race there with Larson and Pierce, because Larson wanted to win and he don't care that car will be on the frame rack. He's either going to win or that thing's going to be on the frame rack because he'll just pay for it to fix it anyway. So that last night I thought would have been a good race if Pierce would have held on. And Larson even said that in his interview. If hopefully he was hoping that he could beat Pierce straight up there, which would have been obviously a good finish.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into what the locals did, we'll talk more about that. No fans, right? How long can this event keep happening with empty grandstands? I mean, see, the Wild West Shootout, when it was in the Phoenix area, that was a straight up destination event, especially. I mean, there was a ton of Wissota drivers that went down there. There was a bunch of late models, but a ton of mods and especially B mods that went down there. And now the early thaw at Casa Grande, that has actually replaced that destination race. So they're all going to that event because the rules fit them a lot better. So you don't get a lot of them snowbirds going down there. A lot of the people that go to Phoenix and stuff for the winter, Mesa, Apache Junction, they don't make the trip over there because it's cold anyway. Could you see this event being a long-term deal, or do you think if it goes another year or two like this, they're just going to say, look, we're going to have to move it. This just ain't working?
Well, it depends what their business model is. I mean, if they're getting most of their money from sponsorship, I guess they could keep forging forward. But if crowd attendance is part of their business model to pay the bills, I don't know how they can keep going. It looked like on the weekend they had a better crowd. So if they rely on a crowd to pay the bills, maybe they have to do a more condensed series or something like that.
Yeah. Kraus?
Yeah, the big question becomes is pay-per-view. How much money are they getting from that and how many people are watching it? I would assume I don't even want to guess the amount of people that are watching that. And the way Royal Jones was talking down in Victory Lane, I don't think he cares, to be honest with you. He was down there hanging out. He was just happy as heck. Kyle Larson was there running at his racetrack. So who knows what they get for sponsorship, what this, but I don't think they care. I think it was on Flow. So, I think there's a ton of people watching, and I don't know what the kickback is or what's going on there, but those pay-per-view numbers at that event, I'd really like to see them because I bet you there's some big money involved in that show with pay-per-view.
Plus, like you said, Royal Jones has cubic money, right? Massively successful business owner. He's got a ton of different business ventures down there. It's probably just a tax write-off for him if he loses anyway, so not a huge deal. So you're probably right there. Biggest surprise of the weekend on a positive side. We'll get to the biggest disappointment in a minute, but did anything stick out to you like, man, that was great, like that was a pleasant surprise, or something that just stuck out to you as a big surprise over the week down there?
I have a couple. This first one is a surprise and a disappointment all in the same one. I was surprised and happy to see that AJ Demo was down there racing a modified. Disappointed in some of his finishes down there, but it is what it is. I guess
he probably was disappointed too, Bert.
Well, yeah, probably. And I guess the surprise, and this was a good surprise, is the performance of Dustin Sorensen down there. I mean, he finished 8th in the point standings for the 6 races, and he had a 7th that did not qualify, a 4th, an 11th, a 9th, and a 10th. So, being his first year, basically racing open late models. I mean, he's raced late models for the last several years on and off, but he's going full time racing open late models this year. So I think, this trip could have gone one of two ways for him. He could have had poor performances and left him scratching his head entering the season, or have good performances and, help him springboard to, hopefully a solid season. And, he had some very good finishes.
Yeah, he showed some signs of speed. In fact, out of all the Wissota area cars that were down there in the late model division, he had the highest finish. Ricky Weiss had a hell of a good series last year, but Ricky, his highest finish was 8th. He never even cracked the top 5. So Sorensen snuck into the top 5 with that 4th place finish he had the one night. So they spoke very highly of him. Of course, he won the USMTS National Championship 2 years ago, right? And then when you look at drivers like the Reaper, Ryan Gustin, RTJ coming out of the mod division, a lot of success there. That translated very well in the late models. That's a guy right there to keep an eye on. He could be our northern guy in the World of Outlaws to really keep an eye on and maybe contend for some wins this year.
Now I did read that Arpin, is Arpin with Longhorn?
Yeah, he runs Longhorn.
Yeah, I did read that he spent a lot of time with Sorensen down there. And I guess it showed.
Yeah, and Steve Arpin lived, so he's from Fort Francis, Ontario, and then he lived down in southern Minnesota. He raced at Deer Creek, and he lived in that area. He ran Deer Creek and Casson, so he got to know Sorensen's very well.
Okay.
Raced against Mike, Dustin's dad. So it's a perfect fit because they've known each other for a long time. So he was there, but he spent a little extra time there, it sounds like, with the Sorensen camp. So that's going to be fun to watch. Coach Kraus, on the positive side, anything that really stuck out, like, hey, that was a big surprise. That was great to see.
I think the one big surprise was the lack of Kate Dillard dominating the mod class. The mod class is usually the most, how do you want to put it? You got, maybe 10, 12 guys. Someone's not going to dominate as much as he did. And I was just looking at the points right now. He won that points by 87 points. He absolutely dominated the mod class. So I would say the rest of those modified guys, usually it's tight knit and there's different winners every night. And looking at Rodney Sanders, Johnny Scott, brand new modified, was getting back in the mods, was irrelevant all weekend. So I think that was my big surprise there on a positive note was just the domination of Dillard, and then the lack of, just overall with the mod guys, how sporadic they were. And, I think someone would give Dillard a run for his money, but for the most part, they didn't.
Yeah, he was on his game. He was super fast there at the end of last year too. He won at least one of those shows at the whatever the USRA Nationals they had down there at the very end of the year. So he's kind of starting right where he left off. Now, my biggest surprise, and I guess on a positive side, seeing a 71 car from up north be very consistently fast down there, Nate Ranke. So typically the Wild West Shootout up until last year when it was in the Phoenix area, kind of dominated by Wissota guys. No Wissota guys got wins this year. However, Nate Ranke, 6 nights, all of them in the top 10. He was the most consistent. He made every feature. He ran well. Super fun to watch down there. So great to see that 71 car. Not a 71A, but still a 71. So kind of a fan. So really cool seeing that. How about on the disappointment side? Is there something that is like, you're just like, what a letdown. Like that was what let you down the most, Bert?
Well, I kind of touched on it already. I mean, to me, the biggest letdown was in the late model division. All the feature winners came from the front row except for one race. The racing behind the leaders was very, very good. I would have just like to have seen a little bit more action for the top spot. But I mean, Bobby Pierce is on his game already, and I guess, you know, if you want to compete against him, you better do your homework.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, there was no like race of the year candidates down there this year. I mean, last year they had a couple that were really good. Not that the racing was terrible, like you said, but there was none that really like, man, that one was epic. We didn't have that. And like Kraus said, maybe we would have, right? If Pierce wouldn't have got a flat, maybe we would have had some sliders to close that deal out, and it just didn't work out. Coach Kraus, biggest disappointment for you?
Well, I like I said, I think just the lack of parity in the mod class. Just Dillard dominating. You know, like I said, the mods are really fun to watch, especially now, kind of in Wissota land. The mods have kind of taken over as being the premier class. I mean, it is what it is. You know that. We all know that. But usually you're getting 4 or 5, 6 guys battling, and you know, not Dillard outrunning everybody. And you know, Terry Phillips was up there at times. Like I said, Dan Ebert I thought was the most consistent guy, but you know, Wolf was okay. Just, you know, Johnny Scott nowhere to be found. Rodney Sanders nowhere to be found. Ramirez nowhere to be found. Those guys are usually always up front battling for, and those guys don't like losing. So I just think the overall, you know, I would like to see the mod races. And that one night, obviously, when Dillard started tail of the B and came through and looked like he might have, he would have been in contention. He had a really bad restart that night. He came from the back. He went back to like 5th, and then all of a sudden he just about got 2nd at the line. If he would have had a bad restart on that one, he would have won that thing. So that's how dominant he was. So just the parity in the mods, I was hoping they'd have. I was hoping the mod races would be out of the 6 that they had would be much, much, much better.
Yeah, I agree totally. So before I get into mine, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our friends of the show, Brad Parsons Soil and Egg Solutions. So I know it's cold, there's snow on the ground, but this is a great time if you're a farmer, Western Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, to start planning, of course, for the 2024 season. Well, what are you looking to do? You're looking to make more money. What does that? Higher yields, right? So how do you want to do that? Well, hell, I can't tell you. Brad can tell you, though. Give Brad a call, 320-219-3542, and learn about the products that he has. He's a racer, right? If you listen to this show, you're a racer. Why not work with somebody in the racing community? He can get you the details. Give Brad a call, Brad Parson, Soil and Egg Solutions. So my biggest disappointment, 3 things really. Number one, just the overall lack of Wissota cars down there. And I get it because they're going down to the early thaw. Makes more sense. But I used to look so forward to the Wild West Shootout because we had a lot of drivers down there that we know that we were able to watch. That just didn't happen. So when you see people like Lucas Rodin go down there, who's won races at the Wild West Shootout, man, I don't know what was wrong, but he kind of laid an egg. It just was not a good week down there for Rodin. I mean, didn't he make the show the first night? Not sure what happened. He did get 3rd. He was on the podium night 2. But then he was out of the top 10 every night after that. Just struggled. So that was a disappointment. I really wanted to see him run good. Jake Tim was my other disappointment. Multiple reasons. Number one, I had a lot higher expectations with him in that late model. And looking at this right here, never cracked the top 10. His best finish was 12th. He had one night he didn't make the show. Kind of surprised, to be honest with you, that he wasn't contending for some top 5s. I figured he'd be right there with Dustin Sorensen. He was not. The other thing that disappointed me, Coach Kraus is talking about, and he's right, Cade Dillard was dominant down there in the modified. I wish Jake Tim would have brought his modified because I'm not convinced that Cade Dillard would have been quite so dominant if Jake Tim would have had his modified in the house, because that thing was extremely bolted at the end of the 2023 season. So when we look at that Mississippi Thunder event, a lot of people kind of looking at Cade Dillard. Jake Tim is going to be in contention for that deal, I promise. So let's jump into another thing that happened over there, guys. They talked about Stormy Scott, right? Stormy Scott. So they were kind of talking. Stormy had a couple good runs down there. Johnny, of course, in a mod, but new team, right? Him and Jason Durham kind of partnering up together, and they have the Category 5 race cars. And I'm like, thinking in my mind, I had to read up on it. I'm like, what what is that? Guys, did you actually read up on that? Do you know what that Category 5 race car actually is?
I did not.
2013 Team Zero car that was built for Rick Eckert. Okay. And Bruce Nunnally, which is Bruce built, which he was the main fabricator, of course, for the Team Zero cars. He does the BMF cars for Hedgecock. He's the fabricator here. He took a 2013, never been raced. Eckert had it, never got raced, and made some changes to it, updated the existing cars. So is it really, right? Is it really a new design car, or is it a Team Zero with a couple changes? I'm going to be interested to see if old Scott Bloomquist comes out of the woodwork and maybe has a comment or two about this, because it wasn't, in fact, a brand new chassis. It was just something that was revamped, kind of like one of them snipers. Just saying, kind of like the same deal. A little different, but kind of the same deal. But Stormy Scott, over and under in the 2024 season. You think he can hit? Think he can hit 3 wins this year, guys? Got to remember, keep this in mind. With Jason Durham at his side, right? Crew chief, of course. Durham was the crew chief for Jonathan Davenport when he won the championship, his $2 million a year. He's the crew chief for Stormy right now. Stormy had a couple nights where he had some speed. 3 races over and under on wins. What do you think?
Anywhere? I mean, not any particular
national events. Lucas, World Outlaw, Flow, XR, right? That type of deal. Big events. Big events.
I'll take the under.
Does MLRA count?
Is that what he's going to run? Have you heard?
I don't know. I'm just saying that with his brother ran that. They ran that a bunch last year, and they did, and so
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll give Bert another fire at it. Then I mean, we can count that.
If you count that, and if you count the Hell Tour, I don't know if he races that. Then I'll take the over on that. Then.
Coach?
Yeah, I think he can get 3. I mean, the way that car was working on the bottom, he was rolling the middle, and he had a ton of drive off. And if Bobby Pierce on the high side with the cushion, you just don't even bother. You know what I mean? But he was hanging in there with them on the bottom, and there was not a lot of people that could roll the bottom and have that much drive coming off. So, and he's probably a little excited. He's got a little new thing going on here, and he can wheel. Everybody knows he can wheel. So I think he's going to get some wins in that thing. And, there's been times where, he was won in East Bay before. He's been quick in Eldora. So I think he's going to get a few wins in that thing.
Yeah, keep an eye on Stormy. That's going to be fun to watch. So 2024 Chili Bowl. I know we watched that. I don't know how much you guys watched. I know Coach, you watched some of it for sure. But first, a shout out. Fast Lane Motorsports and Powder Coating up in Ashland, Wisconsin. Proud sponsor, title sponsor of the #1 series in all of Wissota Racing, the Northland Superstock Series. That's Crows and I's class. That's the best class out there. It just is what it is. But home of the Galloper chassis, custom powder coating, sandblasting, great fabricators over there. If you need parts, they do it all. Fast Lane Motorsports and Powder Coating, Ashland, Wisconsin. Chili Bowl, of course, this year, Logan Seavey, double up, goes back to back. Buddy Kofoid and Corey Day rounding out the podium. Biggest moments. When you think Chili Bowl 2024, I mean, we don't need to go into details of every single night. What moments stuck out to you guys? Bert?
I didn't watch a whole lot of it other than the feature on Saturday night. I mean, I saw some stuff. I mean, the T-Mez thing is probably the thing I saw the most on social media. Was that in a B main?
That was in a B main through the alphabet soup, and they're both in a transfer spot. I think battling for 6th and 7th, which were the final 2 transfer spots. Him and Cannonball McIntosh. They were battling it out, and I think it was the last lap, and McIntosh yard sailed him and sent him flipping, and T-Mez had a big reaction, was yelling at everybody that was around, and the police escorted him right out of the property and made him leave at that point. I don't know if he came back. I think he came back in.
Yeah, I saw an interview with him. He came back in and he said that it was a misunderstanding with the officials as to why he was thrown out. And so they did let him back in. But I saw a video clip of him being interviewed as he was walking off the track after that incident. And he acted as if he didn't know who yard sailed him. And then the reporter told him who yard sailed him. And he goes, well, of course it was. He had some nickname for Macintosh. And
nice. Yeah, those guys drive hard. I mean, they're throwing haymaker sliders nonstop. I mean, Kraus, as a race car driver, right? Top 7 make the dance, right? They make the show. You're getting into the Chili Bowl, right? If you're running in 7th, do you yard sail the 6th place guy knowing you're already in? I mean, how big of a donkey does a guy have to be to pull some shit like that?
Yeah, no, that's a big time donkey award. But, the flip side is there's multiple times during them, they interview people. I don't know what place I was in, they say. And I can, small track like that, it's things happen so quick. There's multiple drivers that said, I didn't know what place I was in. And it's almost an every lap matters there too, with the passing points and, you don't want to get stuck in the Z main and try to come through. So, but I think they kind of knew where they were at and Can't Drive Cannon, Macintosh.
Yeah, that was the nickname.
he sent it in there awful hard. And as soon as I saw it was T-Mez, I'm like, oh no. And then, T-Mez's car started a little fire, and then he flipped his shield up and he got fire extinguisher in his shield, and he chucked his steering wheel and it hit the track official. And then the track official, I knew something was wrong because the track official was chewing his butt, standing right there. I'm like, dude, the guy just rolled, has a chance to win the Chili Bowl and just lost his spot. Just relax. You know what I mean? Just, so yeah, that was definitely a deal. But yeah, so I don't know if he didn't know where they were, but I think they were. You're starting dead last in the thing anyway. Just let off the gas, take your 7th place Cannon, let T-Mez get 6th, and go on your merry way.
Right. Another thing that stuck out, guys, was at last year's event, remember the guy flipped and literally flew right out of the car, and we all thought he was dead, right? I mean, he was flopping around. This year, Christopher Townsend, he tumbled. He got together with Kyle Larson. He took a hell of a tumble. His freaking helmet come off, right? And he ended up fracturing his T3, T4, and T5 vertebrae, and he had bruised lungs. I mean, that was a hell of a ride. And a lot of people are like, oh, he couldn't have had it strapped. I mean, it came right off with his head and neck restraint came off with it. Initial thoughts, guys, when you saw a guy's helmet literally come off?
Well, I mean, obviously the first thought is, how does that happen? I mean, the helmet is to protect, your most important part, your noggin and your brain. But he posted on Facebook afterwards, pictures where he had, marks on his neck where the helmet straps were pulling on his neck. Now, you guys raced and still race. I mean, how easy is it for a helmet to come off in an accident?
You see this right here? I got cheeks. The helmet just sticks right on. Okay, Kraus don't have that. He's still an athlete. He don't have that. I have cheeks. You kind of have to pull it down on there, right? Typically, they don't come off. But here's a question for you guys. Is it actually a good thing in this case it came off? Because he fractured 3 vertebrae and the helmet came off. If his helmet stays on it didn't get pulled off like it did, does he just snap his neck? Is he done? I mean, was it actually a blessing in this instance that the helmet came off?
I doubt it. Because it looks like he had the hybrid sport, one that clips to the same one I have, which is made to keep you from doing that. And obviously, when it head on, you're like no different than an NFL player. I don't think it's going to be ever safe to not have a helmet on when you're in an accident. And those things rolling, the forces and the G forces and those things when they're hitting the ground, it's way worse than just, a little soft roll in a modified or obviously every rollover is bad, but those guys when they're flipping, I mean, they are flipping hard, and there's nothing to those cars. And all the forces are right there. There's nothing spread out. You don't have a nose cone or a front bumper or a rear bumper or a deck or to absorb all this stuff. So no, I don't think I'd ever want to lose my helmet. And I don't know if the chin strap ripped off or broke or I know that not happen to Jake Tim a couple years ago? Did he not? Or it was TPO. It was TPO summer. Remember his chin strap came off. He had to stop and get a different helmet. So I think it's just a case of the drivers being aware of your equipment. Check your chin strap. Check what's going on. It's no different than any sport. It's like Patrick Mahomes' helmet blew up this week because of the cold. You know what I mean? Check your equipment out. Know what's going on before you get in the car. Maybe it was tore beforehand. Maybe he was mad he chucked it. Maybe you got caught in the trailer when he stores it. You know what I mean? You never know what's going to happen to those things. So I think having a helmet on is probably the best case scenario.
He was lucky. Let's just say that. 2 years in a row, extremely close calls over there at the Chili Bowl. Lots of flips, lots of action, lots of craziness. I talked to my boy Jim, right? He's in our group now, my old right-hand man, Changa, and he's like, I never watched it. He's in our pick'ems now. So he's like, well, he watched the prelim nights all week long. He's like, I was in the pick'em, so I was kind of a little bit interested. He goes, these guys are fun to watch. I mean, it's highly entertaining. With that said, it always seems to be a letdown, right? It seems like all week long, the prelim nights are so good, the racing's so good, and then the final feature is just kind of, the first part of it was okay, but the prelim nights are so much better. I just don't. Is there anything they can do to make the main event just a better race? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I've really started watching the Chili Bowl now about the last 6-7 years, and I'm going to tell you that's the first time I've been disappointed in the main in a lot of years. Okay, and it was 100% track prep. The one announcer, who's the guy that races? That's one of the announcers. He drives a car. I can't remember what his name, and he's super fun to listen to. He's really knowledgeable. Right. He said before the race started, he goes, they didn't till the track up as much as they've done in the past years. And what happened? It rubbered up with about, I don't know, was it 25? And he said before the race, this track's going to last 20 laps. And he was about spot on. So, and it latched down, and there's nothing you can do with that thing when it latches down like that. I don't care what kind of cushion you got up there. Whatever is going on. So obviously that was the talk of the Chili Bowl. Prelims are always great. They're always fun to watch, but they didn't till the track up. They didn't completely farm it. They didn't water as much. So I don't know what they were thinking or what they were trying to do, but it was super disappointing to watch a train race. More money on the line this year than there has been in the past. You didn't have the stars you've had in the past, but you still had, CV and Axum and Thorson. I mean, you had all the main guys up there running for it. So, RTJ, I mean, everybody was up there, but super disappointed to see that track rubber up and get latched up.
So Bert, we're going to talk about the locals down there at some of the locals down at the Wild West Shootout. Let's jump ahead here really quick. A little shout out here to our boys over at Daytona 1 Performance Lubricants, okay? Lots of different products out there in the lubricant department. They have everything from tire treatment to engine treatment. This right here is an engine treatment concentrate XL1, and they call it horsepower in a bottle because if you add this, use as directed, dyno proven, you'll gain horsepower and torque, superior protection, reduced engine noise, fuel economy. If you want to learn more about these great products, this engine treatment, and any of the other products they have, get a hold of Chad, 507-828-3536 to learn about Daytona 1 Performance Lubricants. Now, a look ahead, guys. This week, for us WISSOTA fans up here, right, they're having a really, really cool event down in Casa Grande. It's going to be the Ernie Mincy Early Thaw. Now, one of my favorite parts of the Wild West Shootout was always the local. Kind of stormed past that. I kind of jumped ahead. Donkey award to me. So, Bert, you kind of mentioned you had a couple locals you wanted to talk about, maybe from down at the Wild West. Give you a chance to do that.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Sorensen and Tim, but then also just make a mention, Sam Mars was down racing in the Wild West shootout, and he qualified for the feature, 4 out of the 6 features. I think overall, I would deem it as a successful trip for them down there. He didn't qualify for 2 of the features, but he qualified for 4. He got his best finish was a 14th, and he also got a 16th, and then a 23rd and a 25th. But, for him right now, the most important thing is seat time. I mean, he's got to get seat time in the open car. So, it was a long way to travel to get seat time, but, he, like I said, he did qualify for 4 of the features and got some seat time. And so, I think overall you would have to deem that a success for them.
Yeah, I'd agree. Coach, is there any other locals that came to mind that you wanted to give a shout out to?
No, I think we covered everybody. And just to add to the Sam Mars deal, I thought they did a really good job on Facebook. I don't know if you guys watched any of his stuff. He was posting all the time, and everything was positive. Hey, we're learning. Completely different format for him. Pill draw, had a couple of high pill draws that put him in Group B qualifying. And watch, the track was burnt off by the end of that Group B qualifying. It was super tough to qualify back there. So, and that's something he's never had to do, to go out there and qualify to run with these guys. So just good to see him being super positive on Facebook. And cool watching his stories, and he made some reels and did some stuff, and had him coming across the track after he qualified in that last one. We're going from 7th to 4th in that B, so he's going to be just fine. Good kid. He's obviously got his dad behind him in the equipment, so it'd be fun to watch him develop over the course of the summer.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about Sorensen. We talked a little bit about Weiss. Super disappointing week for Ricky Weiss. With Jason Strand down there, the E85. He had a couple pretty good runs. He had his best run being an 8th place finish. He actually was pretty solid there on that final night. Sam Mars, Don Shaw did win a heat race down there. Kind of a rough week for him. Ebert, by far the most consistently up front. All of his races in the top 5. That one night where he DNF'd, he just absolutely trucked a tractor tire on the bottom. He might have contended to win that night. He was pretty good that night. Demo not good. Jake Tim not good. Nate Ranke was really good. Scott Vince came down there, hit with a couple cars from Wednesday on, and he struggled. Like, he had a 602 crate in there, and those X mods, that's just not going to get her done. And Jaden Christ, who going to have to be running some IMCA stuff. He's got a little time off in Wissota. He did win a heat race down there. First ever time in a B mod, made 3 of the 4 shows that he was in down there. So be kind of interesting to see what he does here in 2024 as well. So speaking of that, now let's jump on over to this particular week. What's coming up, right? Let's start down in the desert, right? Let's start with an Ernie Mincy early thaw at the Central Arizona Raceway in Casa Grande, Arizona. So this, in my opinion, is effectively the replacement. It's the destination event for all the Wissota area drivers to go down. They're racing this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Got a week off, then they run next Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The late models is kind of like a Dirt Kings deal where you can run an open motor, but they're restricted. Guys, I'm looking at this, and we got 10, 14. But my last count, and there's probably more than I see, there's 18 Wissota late models going down there. So that's kind of cool. Modifieds are IMCA cars, and then the B mods, the limited mods are kind of conglomerating them together. My last count, there's 8 of those. So there's going to be plenty of drivers for us Wissota area fans to cheer for. Who are you looking most forward to seeing down in the desert? Let's start with you, Bert.
Well, I don't have a list of drivers in front of me as to who's down there.
Let me read some off just in case.
Okay.
So I-94 Speedway on their Facebook page, it kind of been keeping track, plus Central Arizona Raceway. So the late models that I have on the list so far are probably going to be definitely more than this. Chad Becker, Scott Ward, the one TPO of Tyler Peterson, Don Shaw, Matt Sparby, Josh Zimpel, who ran really well down there last year, Dave Moss, Jason Strand, Dustin Strand, Shane Edgerton, Rusty Coleman, Charlie Olson is going to be down there. I guess he's more of a tri-state guy. Denver Nickerson, Dustin Bloom, Shane Sobraski going to drive a late model down there for Chad Fouquet. And then Ryan and Brandon Corbett are going to be down there. And I'm assuming Ricky Weiss is going to be there. He's an old national champion, so Weiss will be there. In the modifieds, IMCA, the ones that come to mind that really stuck out, Tom Berry Jr., Tim Ward, and Devin Fouquet, a northern guy. And then in the B mods, Ryan Kakala, Blake Adams is making the trip down, Ryan Reestead, Ryan McCleary, Jory Berg, Preston Carr, Jake Smith, and I believe Scott Bentz. So that's kind of the list. I'm sure there's more than that, but that's the one I kind of jotted down.
Well, late model wise, probably from that list, probably the one I'm looking most to watching down there is TPO. He had a great season last year, so be interested to see if he picks up where he left off. And then obviously seeing Sobraski in a late model, that's intriguing in itself. And then just a little tidbit about Tom Berry in the modified division. He is going to be racing a car owned by Mike Wiedelstadt, who's from Northeast Wisconsin.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Coach Kraus, what are you looking forward to down in the desert?
Well, I think the big topic's going to be, the open super late models against these other guys, because they're putting restrictor plates in those cars. So Shaw, Weiss, they're all going to have their open cars, and they're going to restrict them. So it's going to be interesting to see, if those guys can get those things to work, because obviously you saw what Shaw did a few years ago when he had his open car out at Huron. Ricky's been pretty dominant in that with his open car, putting that restrictor place on. So I think that's going to kind of be the late model deal. Then obviously the Wissota guys going head-to-head down there. And another name, Travis Sauer is going to be running another B-mod down there for Scott Bentz. So I ran into him at the hockey rink last night. Actually, I've been texting him right now, getting some inside info for my picks later. So it's all about who you know. You guys know that. So another name to throw in down there in the B-mods. And then I think the big thing is going to be that late model restrictor plate, open cars against basically the Wissota cars.
Another guy I think I didn't see on the list, but I'm pretty sure he's going. Isn't the millennial farmer, Zach Johnson, going to run one of Don Shaw's cars down there as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I saw something on Facebook today from Mr. Derek Strickler from DS Power Sports sending me some stuff. So they were in Albuquerque somewhere. So I would assume they're heading somewhere. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be down there.
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch. I'm just excited in general to watch, Wissota guys in action. For me, probably the one, I'm kind of a homer on this one, but Blake Adams. I want to see if he can go down there and run up front in the X-Mod class with a B-Mod. I think he's got a bright future. He's going to be a national championship contender in 2024 in the Wissota Midwest Mod division. Now let's jump on over to Volusia. Of course, they're supposed to practice today. Speed Week's effectively underway tomorrow. I guess tonight, if you're watching it today on Thursday. It's Wednesday when we're doing the show. But the Sunshine Nationals at Volusia, World of Outlaw late model is getting underway. Last year, Devin Moran started out hot. He won the first couple nights there last year. Kind of looking at it, we talked about just how hot Bobby Pierce started over in Vado. If you remember correctly, though, remember Jonathan Davenport started extremely hot, went to Speed Weeks, laid an egg, kind of regrouped after that. Can Pierce maintain what he was doing over there, or will things be a little different when he's got to go head-to-head with Hudson O'Neill, RTJ, right, Overton, Madden, all their rowdy friends? I mean, that's going to be a hell of a big group of cars over there at Speed Weeks. Can Pierce maintain his level of so-called dominance that he had in the desert, or is it going to get a lot more equal when they get to Florida?
Check back with me with my bold predictions.
Sounds good. So let's jump on to the next topic here. 2024 Pick'ems contest, right? Where Obviously, there's a ton of us in the group this year. Before we get into what's happened in the last week or so, Coach Kraus, how about a little shout out to one of our newer sponsors here?
Yes, absolutely. Elevate-Visual hopping on board. Brandon over there, elevate-visual.com. He's got a Facebook page as well. Basically, he's into video production. He's been working with realtors, landowners. Big time was with realty. You can fly your drone over and people can, it's cool seeing the overhead view of your land and the house and what's going on. He also does multiple video productions as well. So you need anything done drone wise, video wise, get a hold of Brandon at elevate-visual.com.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And last week's movers and shakers, Big Bad Brad, plus 19 to the good. And our reigning champion, Curtis, plus 18. Whole bunch of us kind of in the mix there through the middle. And then Mike, getting married this year. I don't know if his fiance is going to rethink this right after. Like, the dude obviously can't pick them. I mean, is she going to rethink the marriage deal? 2 points? Mike, what are we doing here, guy? 2 points. I'm not sure what that's all about. We're giving you balloons there, right? 2 points. I'm not sure how them balloons came, but that's kind of neat little graphic there. But yeah, Mike kind of get after it there. You got to get back in the mix. So our current standings right now, that was kind of interesting, right? Brad's at 22, Curtis at 20, the old 71A and his right-hand man Changa tied at 18. Bert, you're at 16. Coach Kraus and the good Jeff are at 15. Kent's at 14. Dan is at 13. Dan Shaw is at 7. And Mike is at 2. So there we go. Got a lot of picks coming up here this weekend, and got a long season ahead of us. So fan feedback follow-up. So Ricky sent us something here a couple weeks back, and he said, not a lot of Wissota racing going on. Kind of Wissota South this weekend with the event going down at Casa Grande. But he said, bring back something. Bring back the blast of the past. Let's talk a little bit about Wissota racing in the off-season. And he goes, what or who sticks out to you from each decade of Wissota racing, right? Now, before we get into that, I want to give a shout-out to our friends over at Dirt Track Supply. Incidentally, Ron Anderson, the owner of Dirt Track Supply, was at the very first Wissota meetings. Kind of a cool little tidbit there. If you want to learn a little bit about it, stop on in over there in Watertown and talk to them. Probably fill you in a little bit about how great Wissota was, especially in the beginning. But on Dirt Track Supply, they service a lot of racetracks with their parts trucks. They build the aero chassis. They do all kinds of fabricating. They sell tires, safety equipment, you name it. They sponsor a lot of stuff. They give a lot back to the sport, whether it's to drivers, to different events, to tracks, to series. They help. They've been a proud sponsor of the show for a number of years. Check them guys out over in Watertown, South Dakota. That's Dirt Track Supply. So, guys, let's start with the 80s, the first decade of Wissota auto racing. Now, it started the first year, the first national champions were in 1985, and effectively it was just late models and modifieds. There was just a handful of tracks. It was started by promoters. That's why it was called the Wissota Promoters Association. So I'll just give you guys a quick little synopsis here. 1985, so the late model champions throughout the 80s. In 85, your first ever Wissota late model national champ, Jerry Radetsky. Of course, both of his kids, really good race car drivers. They got champ hands. 1986, Lance Matthews got it done. 87, Rainbow Rick Popovich from up in Duluth. In 88, Tim McMahon, who incidentally, Tim McMahon, grandfather of Blake Adams, right? Father-in-law to Buzzy Adams. And then Chuck Swenson from over in Watertown, he won it in 89. In the modifieds, your first ever national champion, Coach Kraus, do you know who the first ever modified national champion was in Wissota?
Boy, was it Leo? Was it the Flying 8 Ball?
Nope. I'll give you a clue. Hoosier Tire North.
Oh boy, now you're looking at Mr. Can't think of their name. It was a Willis.
Pat Willis. Pat Willis, your first ever national champ. Bert, Here's a late model guy. We know this guy is a late model guy. Okay. Your second ever was Soda Modified National Champ, 1986. Home track. I'm not going to give you the home track. We'll see if you can guess it first.
Ron Jones.
Nope. You're close. Do you really think Ron Jones is a late model guy?
Driver I know.
Come on. I give you a clue. Late model guy. Hold on. Home track. Red Cedar Speedway, Menominee, Wisconsin.
It's too early for Thatcher. Late model guy. Yeah, Thatcher didn't race late models.
Wisoda's Mr. Smooth in the late model.
Eggersdorf?
Still racing a late model today.
Larson?
Nope. John Canta.
Really? I would have never guessed that.
Yep.
Okay.
But was sort of modified. And then the next three in his reign of dominance was the Red 7 turned into the 31 Ron Jones. He won in 87, 88, and 89. So when you guys think back to the 80s, and I know Kraus over in your area, it was NASCAR through them years, but if you think back to the 80s, and Bert, there was some Eastern Wisconsin stuff going on in the 80s, especially with the late models. In the late model division or in general in the 80s, when you think Wissota, who or what sticks out to you?
Well, I mean, this doesn't stick out to me when I think of Wissota, but I know this information, because, the Wissota 100 is the biggest race for Wissota. And you always think of Cedar Lake for the Wissota 100, but the first Wissota 100 was not at Cedar Lake.
Coach Kraus, do you know where it was?
I don't recall. No, I don't.
It's a sister track to the Viking Speedway, big half mile over in central Wisconsin. The Marshfield Super Speedway.
I was going to give one more hint, and it's not dirt anymore.
I don't know if you would have got it. So, Bert, do you remember who won in the late model division? Do you remember who won the very first Wissota 100?
Well, I don't remember who won, but I know who won.
It was in 1986. That was the second year they had it.
Pete Parker won the feature. I know a photographer who has a victory lane photo of Pete at that race, and MJ McBride was in the top three. I can't remember if he was second or third.
Nice. So, Kraus, do you remember the old Reliable Trailers by Parker?
I don't. No, I don't.
They remember the fad for years before the enclosed trailers. They had the double, then triple axle with like the 5-row tire rack and the kind of a ramp over deal in the big box. They were badass. Pete Parker was a hell of a race car driver, but he was very well known, especially throughout Minnesota or that side of Minnesota and throughout Wisconsin, for building some of the most badass open trailers known to man. I mean, they were. I used to sit there in school and I used to draw pictures of race cars, and then after going to them events, I would be drawing pictures of Parker trailers. So he was obviously one of the best. So
yep.
What else could go to Bert?
Well, I mean, one driver, I'm assuming he raced in the 80s because he didn't race. I think the 90s was near the end of his career. But I think of the Menards late model.
Oh, John Krasinski.
Yeah.
I tell you, so back then, back through the 80s and even into the early 90s, in my eyes anyway, the mecca of late model racing in the area, Cedar Lake, they had some dudes. I mean, they had some drivers, man. And the Canadians would head down. So you'd have Nesbitt and Kreiderman. I mean, Nesbitt was unbelievable through the 80s, but you had people like Rick Eggersdorf, Jim Brueggemann, Kershensky, of course, Lance Matthews, Radetzky. I mean, there was so many. That era of late model racing was really, really good.
Well, and I wish I would have been older at the time, but I'm seeing pictures from Marshfield Speedway, late models racing at Marshfield, and I don't know if they were WISSOTA shows, but I'm seeing pictures of drivers from Milwaukee, late model drivers from Milwaukee there, late model drivers from Eastern Wisconsin, late model drivers from Central Wisconsin, late model drivers from Western Wisconsin. So it's like, the entire circle of drivers converged to race at Marshfield for some of the specials there.
Yeah, things have changed. I mean, there wasn't as many specials as there is now. So when there was one, they traveled a long ways to get there. In the modified division, a couple guys that come to mind. Brandon Kopp's dad, Don Kopp, was one of the best. I mean, he was unbelievable in Superior, Ashland, Proctor. I remember seeing him down at Cedar Lake up in Hibbing. He was great. And then one of my favorites, Mike Rich, kind of late 80s into the 90s, one of the best in the business. I don't know if he ran a modified necessarily in the 80s. That might have been in the 90s. We'll have to talk to him. But it was just absolute dominance by Ron Jones. I mean, he was almost unstoppable in the modified division. And he got claimed, a handful of times every year. See, back then, the modifieds had a claim deal, and it was nothing for him to get claimed 6, 7, 8 times in a year. So I remember talking to him, and he said they used to spend about $1,500, $2,000 on an engine because they didn't need to last. They were going to get claimed anyway. So it was a whole different era, that's for sure. So anything else, Coach Kraus, when you think back to the 80s, I know most of it's going to be stuff you saw online because you weren't really around the WISSOTA stuff back then, but anything else from the 80s stick out as far as WISSOTA racing?
Yeah, no, you're right. We were all NASCAR. Viking Speedway was NASCAR till 2004. So, and obviously it worked out great for us. But the big thing was back, the 80s, we had some big time mod guys. Dan Ziesen was just kind of getting started there, but Ryan Music and Scott Hillig and Dave Stork all ran back then. So it was always interesting to see how those guys would do down at Cedar Lake, because we were NASCAR, and then they'd drive wherever. I know Ryan Music won a race of champions, I think either at they used to do the race of champions at different venues. He won it. I was either late 80s or early 90s. He won a race of champions either at Superior or Ashland. So that's just kind of my memory of that stuff. And then, the late model guys, Sauk Center, Minnesota, when they started kind of right in that era, that track was 100% mirrored from Cedar Lake. I don't know if you guys knew that. But it ended up being a little shorter. This is a story Don Engelbretson told me. If you ever were at Sauk Center where the wall was, there was a fence right behind the wall. That's where the wall was supposed to be laid, and they poured the wall in the wrong spot. So what happened was Dick Johannick and Don Engelbretson went to lunch. And when they came back, the wall was poured in the wrong spot. So that's why Sauk Center was a little bit shorter than Cedar Lake. So just a little tidbit there about that track. That's why that fence was right behind it. That's where it was supposed to be. And it was a 100% mirror image of Cedar Lake, and so was I-94 Speedway. That was mirrored off of Cedar Lake Speedway. So my point was, when they used to race there, all the late model guys from Cedar Lake would come over to Sauk Center. Jerry Leggett, Steve Feggers, Jim Bruggeman, Rick Eggersdorf. Then you threw in Jeff Hinkemeyer and Jeff Wilding. All those guys raced weekly at Sauk Center. That was kind of, late, 89, 90, 91. So that's kind of my memory of WISSOTA. And then just watching how our locals would do, in the 80s back then. And then, like I brought up Leo Burkhardsmeyer. I don't know. What year did he win the national championship? Do you know, Ryan?
We'll get into that next week when we get into the 90s, because he must
be. But I know he obviously raced in the 80s. Just seeing the Flamin' 8 Ball traveling and coming around is kind of a memory. But that was just kind of my memories of the early. Obviously, I was born in '78, so didn't know too much. But just it's always fun just to look up tradition and see where everybody was racing.
And looking back at this, right, looking at 1988, so Tim McMahon won the national championship in the late models in 88, Rick Popovich in 87. Both of them were, I guess you can call them my area cars, right? Superior, Hibbing, Proctor. That's where they raced. That was the last time. 1988 was the last time a driver from the Twin Ports, Iron Range, that area in the late model division won a natty. So Peterland, Burdick, Vessel, come on, guys, right? Provenzino, why don't you guys step up, put yourself on the map here? We need to get a national championship in the late models back up there. So, Jeff,
you can. I'm pretty sure, Ryan, you can throw your name in there too, because I think you ran late models for a couple years.
I did, but I did not. I'm washed up and old and retired now, so I'm not still at it. We got to talk to these guys that are still doing it. So, and they get 4 nights a week, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of competition, but boy, it'd be nice to see one of the guys from up in northern Minnesota contend for a natty. So, fans, if you're listening to the show, if you're watching on, specifically Facebook or on YouTube, in the comments below, right? When you think back to the 80s with soda racing, what are some things that stick out to you? What are some of your best memories? What are some things that come to mind? I mean, it was a whole different era, guys. I mean, it was open trailers, people in the pits all night long. Things were so much different than the culture. Big. I mean, the crowds were just huge. Back in the 80s, I mean, they were packed nonstop. And I tell you, things have changed with the internet and streaming and just a lot of the economy and so much. But boy, the 80s was kind of in my mind, the start of the heyday of racing. Any other closing thoughts, guys, on the 80s?
No, not really. I'm not as familiar with the 80s as I am for the 90s. So next week I should have some more thoughts.
There we go. So the last lap here brought to you by our friends over at save that. We got them on the next one here. We're gonna save the sponsor one for last. So SRX at Cedar Lake, or maybe not so much. What's your guys' thoughts about that whole deal? What happened there? So SRX announces, hey, we're going to go to the Cedar Lake Speedway. From what I understand, in the last week or week and a half, then SRX announced they're not even going to be a thing. That's kind of a surprise, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a surprise. And, maybe you can connect the dots. It was only a few days or a week or so that this announcement came out, that it was announced that Everham is buying the IROC series. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I mean, if you look at two things together, I think there might be something to that.
Kind of the same deal, right? A little different car, of course, but that was kind of the concept behind IROC, was getting drivers from different genres to come in and cars that were supposed to be the same. And yeah, so you're probably right. They're kind of keep an eye on what happens with IROC. How about Eastern Wisconsin, Bert? I know there's a couple scheduled drops here, but we'll talk about that in the coming shows. Anything else stick out? What's going on in Eastern Wisconsin? Any news over there?
It's kind of, there is a little bit of news. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but Shawano Speedway is looking for a race director. They posted last week that they're taking applications for a race director. So all you keyboard warriors, here's your chance.
Punch the buttons, baby. What? Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I heard of it. I don't know if he resigned, if he got told he needed to resign. No idea.
Yeah, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see. Now that's the race director position, not the race promoter. Brad is still there. Okay. Yeah, Brad is still there, as advertising promoter, but they're looking for a race director for the weekly races.
All right, so I'm going to nominate Bert Lehman for that job.
I do not want that drama.
So I heard a little tidbit. Maybe Coach Kraus can chime in here, but we've kind of had 2 decades of mod tours, right? The Como Mod Tour, the Advantage RV Mod Tour, most recently the Moonshine Mod Tour. Heard some rumblings from a few different places. There may not be a mod tour this year. Kraus, what are you hearing over there in Alexandria?
Well, let's put it is up in the air. You are correct, but the wheels are still spinning, so to speak, still rolling. We're still talking. Benji and I've been helping Benji with it a little bit, and we want to get it going. There's a lot of drivers on board. Actually, like I said, I just saw Travis Sauer at a hockey game here in Alexandria last week. Had a long talk with him. He's all gung-ho to do it, and I know Zach Johnson and Brady Gertis, the guys that ran it last year want to do the tour too. So it just looks some sponsorship stuff going on right now, and it's something we want to do because, like you said, especially over in our area, obviously up north and Cedar Lake and down in those areas, Ogilvie, it's mod stuff nonstop. But you get over this way, the Dakotas, North South Dakota. And then in central Minnesota and western Minnesota, there's not really nothing for the mods to do. So it's still in the works. It is up in the air, and we're hoping we can get something going with that because it was a good thing last year, and we're going to kind of move it over a little bit more centrally located, and maybe get a couple other tracks involved. So hopefully we can get that done, and get a mod tour over in the central Minnesota area.
I know you're helping out with that. So race fans, right? If you're a mod fan, you're looking like, hey, I want to sponsor the show. I want to keep this deal going. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get a hold either Viking Speedway page or else Benji Fromke too. Benji was the main guy, but like I said, I had talked to him too. So you can either get a hold of myself, get a hold of Benji, and if you're interested in doing something, that'd be absolutely awesome. And like I said, we still have some stuff in the works. We had already talked to the tracks and kind of had it going. And Benji, like I said, Benji had talked to me and said, hey, I got to put it on hold. And he wanted to finish his street stock schedule, get his, is still doing the Rebel tour. He's got that kind of finalized now too. So hopefully, like I said, if we can get someone on board to help out, we'd love to continue with the Moonshine Mon Tour.
Well, really, the only thing you need for the tour, right, is sponsor money to help for a point fund. Is that correct?
Well, for a point fund, there's some trophies involved. Right, the big checks, and a point fund. Like I said, there's some travel stuff. Benji's traveling around or whoever it is, and they like to do a nice trophy. Bring it in and stuff like that, and kind of hoop it up, and do some giveaways and some stuff like that for the tour as well on a weekly basis. So obviously there's some stuff there, but for the most part, like I said, the tracks cover the purse, and then point fund, there is an entry fee. Part of that goes to the track, part of that goes to the point fund too. So it is self-sustainable as well, but like I said, there are some expenses involved with that tour as well.
Sounds good. Now, speaking of expenses, speaking of money, speaking of finances, Hoosier, they give out Hoosier checks to the track. This all started back in, when there was a little competition with them and Goodyear and DTRA and so on. But I had a few promoters reach out, and they said, finally, 2 months later, Hoosier actually did send the checks out. So from what I understand, you can confirm this from Viking Speedway, but it sounds like the tracks finally received their Hoosier money this year. Is that true?
They were in the mail. I checked the mail today. I haven't got mine yet. Should be get it here there today or tomorrow. So they did send it out, and from the sounds of it, it was a delay on the Hoosier side of things. So which doesn't surprise me. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, everybody's going to get their checks. And I looked last year, ours wasn't deposited till about mid-January as well too. So and the flip side, you got to be caught up on your dues, and you have to be good standing with WISSOTA. So there is some stuff that goes into that well before you get your check.
So you're on the promoter side of things there, Kraus, and you've been kind of, staying in the loop, talking to other promoters, talking to board members, so on. Well, first of all, Rice Lake Speedway for sale. It's kind of been for sale for a couple years, but they threw it out there on Facebook that if somebody's looking to buy, a lot of history there at Rice Lake, a lot of great drivers came out of that place. Any other news, any other tidbits, anything else, going on in the WISSOTA realm that you've, on a positive side or negative side, whatever, over the last couple of weeks, are kind of quiet right now for the most part?
A couple of new sponsors. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Suburban Chevrolet hopped on board, and it sounds, as far as crate engines, things like that. And I know from the sounds like they got a big sponsorship out of that deal too. Kind of sounds like there's some other sponsorship going on as well. Sounds like Napa may be hopping on board with WISSOTA and doing some things too. So I actually had a chance to talk with Denny Neese last week. We had a meeting. He owns a radio station, runs a radio station up here in Alexandria, and I'm doing some advertising ideas with Viking Speedway, and appreciate him coming up here and meeting with us and helping us out. So sounds like they got a lot of positive stuff going on with WISSOTA, with the sponsorship deal, and they kind of split up into committees. So they got a sponsorship committee and financial and people overseeing everything. So everything he said is absolutely wonderful from what he had said. And, you know, it looks like stuff's really shaping up. So I'm excited. After talking with Denny, I'm super excited to get going on with the WISSOTA season and seeing where the sponsorship stuff goes and things like that. I know the rules committee's been working hard because, you know, they're doing 4 annual meetings now and not just the one, which I think is going to be very productive. Like Denny said, not, you know, going down there for a day and a half and yelling and screaming at each other. Hey, let's get productivity done here throughout the course of the year. So I think a lot of good things happening with WISSOTA right now, which is good to see. And he talked about working with tracks and all that good stuff. So a lot of good stuff going on. I know they're in talks with Hoosier too for the, not this year, but the next year, getting going on with that contract. So like I said, so far so good from the WISSOTA side of things.
Yeah, you know, and I understand they're actually revamping the rule book as well. They're kind of rewording it, kind of making things make more sense. It's outdated. Some things needed to be changed. And a lot of people are like, oh, you guys are WISSOTA haters. All you do is talk shit about WISSOTA. You hate WISSOTA. It's actually quite the opposite, right? We want WISSOTA to thrive. We're not afraid to call a spade, right? Over the last several years, if we see something that's crappy going on, we're not afraid to say it. Now, maybe not. I don't know if anything that they have going on as a result of what they're hearing us talk about. Maybe not. But the drivers, the tracks, everybody needs a voice. And if this stuff's not brought to light, nothing ever changes. So I'm going to give a tip of the cap to the crew over there at WISSOTA right now on positive steps forward and looking forward to a good 2024 season. Little open late model stuff here. Speaking of chassis stuff, back one last thing on the last lap before we jump into our last segment. Capital chassis. So we talked last year, Bert, that there was some speculation that Shane Clanton was going to be the Lucas Oil head tech official. Turns out that's probably not going to be the case, right? Because him and Chad Smith have purchased, it's kind of a unique deal. They're still in a partnership type deal with Marshall Green, but they're going to be running the day-to-day operations of Capital race cars. And Marshall Green's business is going to be doing, he's got like a big fab company. They're going to be, you know, fabbing the cars, but sounds like Clanton's going to be racing some shows, doing some testing. They struggled last year. I mean, let's face it, Clanton won some races the year before, but he was awful last year and there was really no Capitals. Do you think this is enough to put Capital back on the map and make them relevant, or is it too little too late? What's your thoughts?
Oh, well, the only thing that's going to put them back on the map of being relevant is if somebody gets in one of their cars and starts winning some races. You know, you can do anything you want, but if you don't win races, you're not going to sell cars. What was the NASCAR slogan? Win on Sunday, sell on Monday. So, you know, winning is what's going to get them back on the map.
For sure. So let's get into the 3 bold predictions, our last segment of the show. And we'll start with a little accountability here. How it works is every week we make 3 predictions, racing related, and they either did happen, did not happen. Sometimes we push them out, something that's going to happen later. Keep track of if we're right or wrong or indifferent. So, Bert, you had a few come off the board here. You said Kyle Larson was going to beat Bobby Pierce on the first Saturday and Sunday of the Wild West Shootout. That did not happen. You said 2 late model drivers would make the A main at the Chili Bowl. That did not happen. But you did get one right here. You said Sam Mars was going to have at least one top 15 showing. Kind of slid it in there. Good thing you didn't go top 10. But he said he was going to have one top 15 showing at least at the Wild West Shootout. That did happen. So future is bright for Sam Mars. Good Jeff helps us out. He said Kyle Larson would sweep the opening weekend of the Wild West Shootout. That did not happen. Coach Krause, you had a few come off the board here as well. You said the Winged Outlaw winner, which was the top series at Tulsa, happened to be Emerson Axum, would also win the Chili Bowl. That did not happen. You said there would be a back-to-back winner in the late model division on opening weekend at the Wild West Shootout. It was Cade Dillard and Bobby Pierce. One more lap, Pierce might have won that one. That was a close one for you. And then you said at least one past Wissota national champion would win an A main at the Wild West Shootout. That did not happen. Quite honestly, there just barely was any Wissota cars there. But you did get one right. You said there'd be back-to-back winners in the modified division opening weekend of the Wild West Shootout, and Dillard doubled up, so you got one on the board there. In the old 71A, I had 4 come off the board as well. I said Wissota Midwest mod drivers would win at least 2 A mains at the Wild West Shootout. The best run was by Rodin. He got 3rd. They didn't even sniff a win down there. I said that the Longhorns would sweep in the late models. And Brandon Shepard would win at least 2. I think that second part sniped me a little bit there. I said 2 late model drivers would make the Chili Bowl, had to add to it because of Burton. I said at least one would be in the top 10. That did not happen. And then I had RTJ will be the highest finishing late model driver at the Chili Bowl. That was a win because he got 12th in the B main. He was the highest in the alphabet soup of all the regular late model drivers. So our current standings right now, we're just getting started. Season just started for this. I got 1 correct. Bert has 2 correct. Coach Kraus has 1 correct. The Peanut Gallery has 0 correct. Bert, you're at 40% on the year, and Coach Kraus and I are at 20%. Peanut Gallery is at 0. And then we got our 3 predictions for this week. Make 3 laps around the track here. We got Bert. We got one of Kraus's buddies here. Kenny Barber sent in a few picks. So he's got 3. We'll throw him in the mix. And we got Coach Kraus. And we'll finish it up with me. So, Bert Lehman, what say you?
All right. You had asked me earlier about Bobby Pierce's hot streak and if he can continue that. And my first bold prediction is Pierce will go 0 for 3 this weekend in World of Outlaw racing as far as victories.
He'll get the 0 for Pierce. Gonna not get a win this week at the Sunshine Nationals. Coach Kraus, we'll go with you next.
Boy, that finally you made a bold prediction, Bert, for once since I've been on the show. It's like a hard time, Bert. So he's going to go Volusia. We're going to stick with Volusia. I'm going to go Hudson O'Neill's going to win 2 out of 3 this weekend.
Okay. So we're going to go with Kenny here, and he said Brandon Shepard is going to win at least 1 this weekend at Volusia. And then I'm going to do a little parlay here. These drivers, all 4 of these drivers, will win at least 1 A main this weekend. Hudson O'Neill, Tom Berry Jr., Tyler Peterson, and Jory Berg. Each of those drivers will win at least 1 feature this weekend. Bert Lehman?
I'm going to go, this is different from yours. Tom Berry will have 2 podium finishes this weekend. In the modified.
Exactly 2? Exactly 2?
At least 2. At least 2.
Okay. So TBJ at least 2 podiums this weekend in the IMCA modified division. All right. Coach Kraus.
All right, we're going to have some fun. We got to stick with the locals. Just texting him, my boy Travis Sauer. He's going to get he's going to win 2 out of 3 this weekend in the B mods. He's driving one of Vince's B mods. We all know Travis Sauer could possibly be one of the best all-time Midwest mod drivers in Wissota. I don't think anybody's going to argue with me with that. So we're going bold, Bert. Travis Sauer's getting 2 out of 3 this weekend.
I want to be a cowboy, baby. All right. Travis Sauer, he's fun to watch. I'm going to go with Kenny's pick here. Don Shaw will have at least 1 night out of the races he races this weekend where he doesn't make the feature at Casa Grande. So that's from Kenny. I'll go down to the Ernie Mincy early thought as well. and I'm going to go with the young gun here. Blake Adams will be on the podium at least one night this weekend. Blake Adams with at least one podium this weekend. Bert, white flags out, last lap. Third pick. What do you got?
I'm going to go Madden will win at least one feature this weekend and have another podium, at least one feature and at least one other podium finish.
At least one feature win and at least one other podium. For Madden, you said?
Yes, Madden.
Okay. Kraus?
All right, I'm sticking with my 2 out of 3 thing I got going here, Bert. And we are going down to the early thaw. And Ricky Weiss is going to win 2 of 3 this weekend in the late model. So pretty dominant down there last year at this deal. And he's got his open car. He's going to put the restrictor plate in. He's winning 2 out of 3 this weekend.
All right. So I got one from our boy Dan here. He's in our picks as well. And he said at least 2 of the 3 nights at Volusia, their race event will end after midnight. At least 2 of the 3 nights. They have a really bad deal down there with 3 classes, tons of cars, dragging it out. He said at least 2 of the 3 nights at Volusia are going to go past midnight. Kenny's third and final pick. He said at the Ernie Mincy early thaw this weekend down there, there's going to be at least one of the feature winners will be a driver that has not won a feature at the early thaw before. So at least one new winner at the early thaw. So that's his third and final. And my third and final pick, I'll go down to the old Casa Grande to the Central Arizona Raceway myself. The late model A-mains, there's 6 of them. Thursday, Friday, Saturday this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week. All 6 features in the late model division will be won by former Wissota late model national champions. So there we have it, boys. Episode number, 208 in the book. So any closing thoughts for you guys before we sign off here?
Nope.
Nothing from Kraus?
No. Stay warm, folks. Jam the Stands night at the Blizzard game on Saturday. Cub Foods hops on board. We've been doing this for years. They buy out the whole rink. You get free tickets to the Blizzard game. And one year we had 2,300 people in the barn and the place was packed. It's nuts. And then this year, since I do the scheduling, I've decided to bring in our arch rival, Granite City Lumberjacks. And we got an 11-game winning streak on the line, taking on Granite City, who are tied for second place right now. So that's going to be my Saturday night. We're going to have some fun. We're going to blow the roof off the place and watch some racing.
Drink lots of beer and yell at the coach.
That usually, or yell at the ref. I'll be yelling at the refs. Nobody yells at the coach because it's at my place. And I'm the king around there when it comes to that. So, but we'll be yelling at the refs. There's no doubt about that.
Nice. Like, Bert.
Well, I was just gonna you won't let me talk about football, so that's what I'll be doing Saturday night.
You can say go Niners. We're good with that. Go Niners. I got to be honest with you. I was a little disturbed, right, as a Vikings fan, watching the Packers looked dangerously good. I was surprised, and I'm like, we gave you a lot of shit. It's before the season. We're like, oh, yeah, you're stuck with Jordan Love. Now it's going to be suicide watching Green Bay. Well, he looked pretty good, so it's going to be fun. I'll be definitely watching football this weekend, but I think we're not cheering for the same team.
I understand.
So I tell you what, it's going to be a fun weekend. I mean, I'm looking forward to Volusia, but honestly, I'm really looking forward to that deal down in Arizona. A lot of Wissota drivers. You can catch that action on Dirt Race Central, by the way. So make sure to check that out. So as always, I'm Ryan Aho. That is the one and only Bert Lehman. That's Coach Kraus. Thanks for tuning in to to the One to Go Show.